The National Desk, America's News Now. Right now, unrelenting heat continues to endanger more than 100 million Americans, and the triple-digit threat isn't over. Ukraine remains out of NATO, but President Biden issues a clear message to Russia.
Our commitment to Ukraine will not weaken. We will stand for liberty and freedom today, tomorrow, and for as long as it takes.
Then Republicans take on FBI Director Chris Wray, accusing the Bureau of abusing its power.
You don't give straight answers. You give answers that later a court deems aren't true. And then at the end of the day, you won't criticize an obvious shakedown when it's directly in front of us. And it appears as though you're whitewashing the conduct of corrupt people.
This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Eugene Ramirez. We start with breaking news out of Alabama, where a manhunt is underway right now after 2 firefighters were shot inside of their own fire station north of Birmingham earlier today. Now, both are alive, but they suffered critical injuries and are still being cared for at a local hospital. We are waiting to learn some more details about the suspect or suspects in the case, but police believe it was a targeted attack.
I find it extremely troubling that they would be targeted. I mean, I hate to say that we would be bigger targets, but unfortunately the police would be than our firefighters. I mean, our firefighters are there to protect and aid and rescue our citizens, and to see that them be critically injured is just very troubling, disheartening that would happen in our community.
And we will, of course, update you with new details as we get them here. Meantime, the record-breaking heat continues right now. More than 110 million Americans are under heat alerts today. That's covering parts of the west, southwest, south, south central, and southeast. Temperatures in the triple digits right now in some areas. Forecast to reach 120 degrees in some parts of the southwest by this weekend. Record temperatures in Florida's oceans threatening to bleach the coral reefs, even destroy some of them. Recovery underway now in the Northeast after some historic flooding. Check out these troubling images there. In Vermont, cities right now soaked, and more of this is on the way with rain and storms forecast tomorrow. Officials are assessing the widespread damage there, and they're watching a dam that was reaching capacity. Now, as of this morning, no injuries or deaths were reported, but the rescues out there continue. State officials saying that they are, however, in much better shape today than they were yesterday. Meanwhile, in New York, the Metro North Railroad is back open, and Amtrak service has been resumed between New York City and Albany. But officials said the damage in the state could cost tens of millions of dollars to repair. Residents there could also see more rain and storms in the coming days. More than 30 million people are at risk for severe thunderstorms tonight, mostly in Missouri, Illinois, Kansas, and Indiana. The biggest threats are the damaging winds, large hail, and some tornadoes in some places. Winds could exceed 75 miles per hour in Kansas and Missouri. Taking a look at your money now, some good news for a change. We learned today that inflation in the U.S. has reached its lowest level in more than 2 years. The Consumer Price Index year over year for June was just 3%. That's down from 4% in May. It's the lowest increase we've seen since March of 2021. Now, while overall prices rose just 0.2% from May to June, core inflation rose 4.8%. That doesn't include fuel or food prices, but that increase also beat expectations. And despite the reports, some Americans say they're not quite feeling the relief just yet. National correspondent Ultra El-Nashar has a look at what some say they need just to keep up.
For American consumers, it's been an exhausting 2 years of soaring prices. Now, inflation is the closest it's been since spring of 2021 to a stable rate of 2%. But there's still a way to go.
What I perceive is that the prices are still going up.
In June, shelter was once again the biggest driver of inflation. Housing costs up 0.4% from May and up 7.8% from June of last year. Among the items driving down the rate of inflation are gas, utilities, used cars, and airfare. But household budgets are still stretched thin. A new Bankrate survey finds Americans on average say they'd need to earn about $233,000 a year to feel secure or comfortable with their finances. Beyond that,
to feel financially rich or financially free, Americans on average feel that they need to earn about $483,000 a year. Looking at data from the Census Bureau, workers in 2021 who were full-time, year-round employed, they're making about $75,000 a year.
Bankrate analyst Sarah Foster says among those in the survey who said they don't feel financially secure, about 2/3 blamed high inflation.
it's becoming increasingly harder for Americans to avoid getting priced out of America.
That strain is expected to show up during back-to-school shopping. Deloitte projects that parents will spend 10% less than they did last year. It's the firm's first forecasted decline in nearly a decade. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Today at the first ever NATO-Ukraine Council in Lithuania, President Biden and other world leaders of the G7 committing to supporting Ukraine long-term.
We're going to help Ukraine build a strong, capable defense across land, air, and sea, and from which will be a force of stability in the region and deter against any and all threats.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky met with the leaders just yesterday. He said it's absurd there's no official time frame for Ukraine to join NATO, but believes it will happen soon.
And I believe that NATO needs us just as we need NATO. And I believe that this is absolutely fair. I am confident that after the war, Ukraine will be in NATO.
President Biden and the other G7 leaders agreed to send a new aid package to Ukraine as the war with Russia continues past the 500th day mark now. Russia has condemned that aid to Ukraine. Police say at least 3 people are dead and 14 hurt after a crash between a Greyhound bus and 3 tractor trailers in Highland, Illinois early this morning. These trucks were parked along a highway exit to a rest stop, which is illegal in the state of Illinois, but semi-trucks often park there overnight for the drivers to get some rest. Details on the victims were not immediately released. Family members of the Buffalo shooting victims are suing social media platforms, body armor companies, and a gun shop. Now, 10 people were killed and 3 hurt last May, you'll remember, at a supermarket in a predominantly black neighborhood. Attorney Ben Crump says the companies helped the shooter, quote, load that gun. He said this takes them one step closer to trying to get some justice. Meantime, more guns are being discovered this year at airport security checkpoints compared to last year. The National Desk, Steve McCarran reports.
Now that airline travel is back to pre-pandemic levels, airports like SeaTac are seeing a lot more passengers and an increasing problem along with them. More than 3,200 guns stopped by TSA officers at security checkpoints nationwide since the start of the year. 58 of them at SeaTac Airport alone. Both numbers surpassing the totals from the first 6 months of 2022.
The busiest time at SeaTac will be the month of August. And we cannot have people bringing firearms that slow down the screening process, that require that law enforcement contact, that remove the traveler from the screening checkpoint. All of that delays people, and it's time for it to stop.
TSA officers screened roughly 17.5 million people from coast to coast over the 4th of July holiday, hitting their busiest day ever on Friday, June 30th with nearly 2.9 million. The TSA says one possible reason for the increase in gun discoveries this year, more people traveling for the first time in years who might be a bit rusty on the rules of carrying guns through airports. About 89% of the ones stopped at SeaTac have been loaded.
And obviously, one of the big concerns of passengers would be, are some of these loaded guns making it onto planes? How can you assure people that that's not happening?
So there's circumstances where there have been reports of firearms that maybe were discovered on a plane. It is very rare, and it's something we're aware of. It's something that's investigated very, very deeply.
Late last year, the TSA increased the maximum possible fine for bringing a gun through a checkpoint to nearly $15,000, more than $1,000 higher than before. Thankfully, SeaTac does not rank in the top 10 airports with the highest number of guns discovered. But Danker says even one is too many.
But I always like to remind people that if you're a firearm owner, it comes with responsibility. And responsibility is you know where your firearm is at all times. Should never be in your carry-on bag.
Right now, as ethics among Supreme Court justices comes into question, now Justice Sonia Sotomayor's staff is accused of pushing colleges to buy her books when she's visited the campuses. Associated Press reporting reveals the colleges may also profit from the high-profile visits. Now, while the court says hosting universities and colleges must confirm appearances are not fundraisers, they do routinely put justices in rooms with influential donors. There's been a spotlight on court ethics since April when it was revealed a billionaire Republican donor funded luxury trips and had other questionable financial ties to Justice Clarence Thomas. Coming up here on the National Desk, no love lost between the FBI and the GOP. We go inside this fiery back and forth at today's oversight hearing with FBI Director Christopher Wray. And President Biden has a new approach to student loan relief, the details and what it could cost. Then Amazon Prime Day comes to an end, but consumer scams continue. How to protect your data when we return in 90 seconds. FBI Director Christopher Wray sat through a tense hearing today. The Republican-led House Oversight Committee probing whether the Bureau has become too politicized and weaponized. Democrats argue the attacks are unfounded and put national security at risk. National correspondent Christine Frizzell reports.
The FBI, once again a target of House Republicans. A House Oversight Committee hearing centered largely around claims the Bureau has abused its power time and time again, and that some Americans are taking notice.
They've seen counterterrorism resources being used against school parents, the homes of conservative political opponents being raided. They've seen conservative states being targeted over their election integrity laws.
Many GOP lawmakers also honing in on a recent ruling, a federal judge finding the federal government violated the First Amendment in making suggestions to social media companies, though the FBI denied its communications were in any way suppressing speech.
When some other intelligence agency gives us information about a foreign intelligence service being behind some account, we will call social media companies' attention to that. But at the end of the day, we're very clear that it's up to the social media companies to decide.
Suggestion of the most powerful law enforcement operation is not a suggestion. It is, in fact, effectively an order.
Meanwhile, Democrats argued the purpose of the hearing was to sow more doubt about the nation's top law enforcement agency, which recently had to open up a new unit to deal with increased threats against FBI personnel.
We are here today because MAGA Republicans will do anything to protect Donald Trump, their savior. Welcome to the legislative arm of the Trump re-election campaign.
Many GOP lawmakers contend the FBI has become weaponized for political reasons, and Americans are noticing.
You preside over the FBI that has the lowest level of trust in the FBI's history. People trusted the FBI more when J. Edgar Hoover was running the place than when you are.
Indeed, a recent Fox News poll showed confidence in the FBI has fallen to 59%, though it's still much lower than for members of Congress, who get just 34%. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzell.
Lawmakers want to investigate tax prep services TaxSlayer, H&R Block, and TaxAct over whether they illegally shared customer information with Google and Meta for years. Now, Meta and Google say that their policies prohibit receiving that type of information, but the tax prep companies suggest it may have happened by accident. According to recent reports, the information of millions of taxpayers may have been exposed. President Biden unveiled a new student loan relief plan to replace that forgiveness program the Supreme Court recently ruled against. The SAVE plan would raise the poverty line cutoff by $10,000, so borrowers earning less than $32,800 per year won't have to make payments. Now, as long as borrowers cover their adjusted monthly payment, even if that's zero, any remaining interest will be waived. Depending on enrollment, the plan could cost the government up to $361 billion over 10 years. The first part of the SAVE plan will be implemented later this summer. Traces of subsea explosives were found in samples taken from a yacht in the investigation into the Nord Stream 1 pipeline explosion. Investigators from Denmark, Sweden, and Germany have been looking into who destroyed the pipeline last year. So far, no organization or state has been implicated. Japan's defense ministry says North Korea fired an intercontinental ballistic missile into the waters near its territory. This is the second ballistic for North Korea in the last month, and the move comes after the North threatened to shoot down U.S. military reconnaissance aircraft for hostile espionage near its territory. Governor Kim Reynolds says on Friday that she will sign the new bill banning most abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy. It passed the legislature late last night. Governor Reynolds called the members back for this purpose after the state Supreme Court did not allow a previous law banning abortions to stand last month. The law will go immediately into effect when it's signed. Lawsuits to the bill are already expected. Most U.S. adults want abortion to be legal, at least through the initial stages of pregnancy. That's according to a new Associated Press poll conducted in late June, a year after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. It found 73% of adults think abortion should be allowed at 6 weeks of pregnancy. About half say abortions should be permitted at 15 weeks. Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville told CNN today that he has no plans to remove the holds he's placed on 265 Defense Department nominations unless the DoD reverses the policy to provide leave to service members who travel to receive an abortion or other reproductive care.
The solution is take the policy, go back the way it was, and then send us a bill and let everybody vote on it. Let's let the American people, their representatives, vote on what they're trying to do with this bill that they changed with a memo.
The CDC says there's a jump in norovirus cases on cruise ships with 13 outbreaks so far this year. That's the highest number recorded outbreaks since 2012. Norovirus is a contagious illness that causes inflammation in the stomach and intestines. The best way to prevent the spread is to wash your hands well with soap and warm water. Now, the CDC may change the rules on importing dogs into the U.S. This follows a jump in rabies cases overseas. New guidelines would let dogs from low-risk countries come into the country, into the U.S., if owners have documents showing the dog has been in that setting the past 6 months. Dogs from high-risk countries would have to get a rabies vaccine and possibly be put in quarantine for some time. The EPA has set stricter limits on the greenhouse gases used in refrigerators and air conditioners. The agency will impose a 40% overall reduction in hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, starting next year. These HFCs are highly potent greenhouse gases. The U.S. and more than 130 countries have signed an agreement to greatly reduce HFC production by the year 2036. A new study shows some surprising results when it comes to one of the most common prescription painkillers used to treat things like back pain. Medical reporter Liz Bonus shares what researchers have discovered about the use of opioids.
Hey there, hello to you. This study found opioids no better for acute neck and back pain than non-opioid treatment when researchers looked at pain scores over a period of 6 weeks.
Surgeons at Ohio's Christ Hospital that supplied this video say it all comes down to what spine specialists and those who treat back pain have known for a long time.
And unfortunately, opioids just don't perform very well in controlling acute back pain.
Dr. Jared Krasto says researchers in the journal Lancet compared nearly 350 patients in 2 groups. All had neck or low back pain as part of the study. Half were given prescription painkillers called opioids, the other half a placebo. Not only was there no difference in the pain reduction at 6 weeks reported, he told me, between the 2 groups.
And actually what they found was that about 52 weeks, so a year out, that the people in the placebo or arm of the study actually were doing somewhat better.
In addition to that, the painkiller group had far more reported side effects, such as dizziness and constipation, not to mention the risk for addiction.
And they found that about 20% of patients in the opioid group were at risk of misuse at about 1 year, which is high. We have data that already shows that if patients are prescribed opioids even one time, there's a 6% chance that at 1 year they're still using opioids.
Now, this, of course, critical to find out because it's estimated 8 in 10 of us will have back pain at some point in our lives. I'm medical reporter Liz Bonus. Now back to you.
The FBI is investigating after Chinese hackers breached U.S. government email accounts through a vulnerability in Microsoft's cloud. The White House first alerting Microsoft of that hack. Pentagon and military emails were not impacted, and it's not the first time state hackers have hit Microsoft. In 2020, Russian hackers exploited weaknesses in the same system. Elon Musk announced the creation of a new AI company called XAI. On the new website, he said the goal of XAI is to understand the true nature of the universe. The Twitter owner had spoken of plans to challenge ChatGPT. Developing now, unionized Hollywood actors say they'll go through federal mediation with studios, but doubt there will be an agreement before tonight's deadline. Members of the Screen Actors Guild say they're not getting fair compensation. The Writers Guild of America has similar issues with studios, with members on strike since May. One member hopes the actors strike to create more change.
If both unions struck together and were in solidarity, it would really have an impact on the industry. Without actors or writers, I feel like that would get things moving.
If both writers and actors are on strike, most productions would probably come to an end. Prosecutors have rested their case in the ongoing sexual assault trial against actor Kevin Spacey. 4 men have testified that the actor preyed on them. Spacey says he didn't do anything without consent. The defense will start presenting its case tomorrow. Spacey could potentially face life in prison if convicted. Coming up here on the National Desk, ADC teen's daring adventure to raise some money for his sister, where he's going and why, when we return. The National Desk is taking the pulse of America, and we start with what to look for to avoid scams when shopping for some good deals.
3D Tetris.
Marie-Ange De Silva is taking advantage of Amazon's deep discounts, looking to save on household items and books for her 4-year-old son, Liam.
You want some herbals?
No. But a growing number of people shopping on Amazon and other online retail sites, even social media, are falling victim to scams. They look like this. Scammers will send random text messages or emails known as phish. These impersonators create urgency by telling you your card will be charged or your account is being locked. What they're really after is your personal information.
Me. Yeah, it was on Facebook. It looked like it was an interesting product.
She ended up buying that product, but it never came. It would take her weeks, but was lucky to get a refund through her credit card company.
And I think we're also just afraid to admit it because we feel that we've been conned.
By now, 17-year-old Hudson Reynolds is en route to Tanzania, Africa.
I've had to watch her live with this disease her whole life.
He's talking about his sister Tia, who lives with PKU.
She was drinking formula and eating small amounts of fruits and vegetables. She has very classical or severe PKU, so her protein allowance was 1/4 of an egg a day.
Hudson watched his sister battle this rare disease her entire life.
Yeah, she tells me how grateful she is, like, every day. She's really proud of me.
Hudson is setting out to hike Mount Kilimanjaro to raise money for PKU research.
Right now, we're at 193,000, and only 7,000 away from our goal.
It's been a big priority for his family to find a cure.
And in Columbia, South Carolina, the next generation of rocket scientists are earning their rocket launching certification this summer. Kids in Columbia got the chance to launch handmade rockets. Students designed and launched them at the Challenger Learning Center. But people there say that this is more than just about science.
On a deeper level, they learn about confidence and understanding that they can do something that is considered to be challenging and hard. Building a rocket is not easy.
Lots of learning there for the kids. The sky's the limit. Coming up here on the National Desk, authorities in California trying to capture one particular sea otter. Why they say the animal is too dangerous to stay out there on the loose. Increasingly popular pickleball taking over Fenway Park now. The Pickle 4 Ballpark Series starting today. It runs through Sunday. There's going to be an exhibition with top players from the Professional Pickleball Association Tour, and players of all levels can reserve time on one of the dozen courts there. After Boston, the series heads over to San Francisco to Oracle Park. Lots of people playing pickleball these days. Listen to this. Wildlife officials in California searching for an aggressive sea otter. Since 2021, a long time now, this otter has been approaching surfers, kayakers, and paddleboarders. It was spotted biting and stealing 3 surfboards over the weekend. Those incidents are dangerous as sea otters have some sharp teeth and strong jaws. Authorities are trying to capture the sea otter and bring it to an aquarium. Just once it's, lay of the land out there. So do it for us right now. Don't forget to join me tonight for the evening edition of the National Desk. You want to check your local listings for the exact time. I'm Eugene Ramirez. Thanks for watching. See you soon.